The morning air on New Busan smelled like burned metal and fear. Dr. Hyunwoo Park crawled through the ruins of what used to be a school playground. His medical bag felt heavy on his back, but he kept moving. 3 human survivors were trapped in the basement of the collapsed building ahead. He had to reach them before the Valerian patrol returned. Hyunwoo pressed his back against a broken wall and checked his watch. The aliens would be back in 20 minutes. Their patrol schedule never changed. They were creatures of habit, which made them predictable. That was good for humans like him who still fought back. He closed his eyes for a moment and thought about his daughter Minji. She would have been 7 years old today. She loved playgrounds like this one. Before the war started, he used to push her on swings just like the twisted metal frame he was hiding behind now. But Minji was gone. His wife Sora was gone too. The Valerians had killed them on the first day of the invasion 3 years ago in Seoul. Hyunwoo remembered coming home from the hospital to find nothing but ash where his house used to be. A soft cry came from the basement below. Hyunwoo shook his head and focused. The past was gone, but these 3 people were still alive. He could still save them. He moved carefully across the rubble. The Valerians had good hearing, and their ships could detect movement from high above. But Hyunwoo had learned to move like a ghost. He had been doing rescue missions for 2 years now. The basement entrance was blocked by concrete slabs. Hyunwoo pulled out his small plasma cutter and began working on the debris. The tool made almost no noise, which was why the human resistance loved it so much. Inside the basement, he found an old man with a broken leg, a young woman with burns on her arms, and a teenage boy who was unconscious. They were all dehydrated and scared. "Dr. Park," the woman whispered. "We thought no one would come." "I always come," Hyunwoo said softly. He opened his medical bag and began treating their wounds. "The transport ship will be here in 15 minutes. We just need to get you to the pickup point." As he worked, Hyunwoo felt the familiar weight in his chest. It was not sadness exactly. It was something deeper. Every person he saved reminded him of the people he could not save. His family, his neighbors, the thousands of civilians who died in those first terrible days. But this weight did not make him weak. It made him stronger. It made him more careful with each life he touched. Every heartbeat he protected was a small victory against the aliens who had taken everything from him. "Can you walk?" he asked the old man. "I think so," the man replied. Hyunwoo helped him stand and tested the makeshift splint on his leg. It would hold long enough to reach safety. They moved slowly through the ruins toward the pickup point. Hyunwoo carried the unconscious boy while the woman helped the old man walk. Above them, the sky was gray with smoke from the Valerian factories. The aliens had turned New Busan into a mining operation. They were taking rare metals from the ground to build more ships for their war machine. Humans were just obstacles to be removed. But humans were stubborn obstacles. Captain So-young Kim had taught Hyunwoo that during his first month with the resistance. Humans did not give up easily, especially when they had something to protect. They reached the pickup point, with 5 minutes to spare. It was an old subway entrance hidden by fallen buildings. Hyunwoo activated his emergency beacon and waited. The transport ship appeared like a whisper, hovering just above the rubble. Its pilot was Jaemin's son, one of the best shuttle operators in the resistance. He could fly through Valerian sensor nets like they were not even there. 3 passengers and 1 doctor, Hyunwoo reported as they loaded the survivors. "Good work," Jaemin replied. "Command wants to see you when we get back. They have a new mission." Hyunwoo nodded and took one last look at the ruined playground. Somewhere in those twisted swings and broken slides, he could still hear the echo of children laughing, Minji laughing. The flight back to the hidden base took 40 minutes. Hyunwoo spent the time checking on his patients and thinking about the new mission. Command only called him personally for the dangerous jobs, the ones where they needed someone who would not give up no matter what happened. The resistance base was built inside an old asteroid mining station. It was cold and cramped, but it was home to 3,000 human survivors. Children played in the corridors while their parents worked on weapons and supplies. Captain So-Young Kim was waiting for him in the command center. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and scars on her hands from building explosives. "We have a problem," she said without greeting. "Valerian forces have captured a research facility on Kepler 442b. They are holding 200 human prisoners there." Hyunwoo studied the data on her screen. The facility was heavily guarded and far from any human territory. "What kind of research?" he asked. "We do not know. But our spies say they are only taking prisoners with specific psychological profiles. People who have lost family members but still fight back. People like you." Hyunwoo felt a chill run down his spine. The Valerians were not known for their interest in human psychology. They usually just killed or enslaved their prisoners. "I need you to lead a reconnaissance team," So-Young continued. "We have to find out what they are doing to our people." "When do we leave?" "Tomorrow morning. It is a 3-day journey, and the window for approach is very narrow." That night, Hyunwoo sat in his small quarters and looked at the only picture he had left of his family. Minji was smiling in her mother's arms, while Sora laughed at something he had said. He touched the glass gently and made a promise to them, as he did every night. He would keep fighting until every human was free or until he joined them in whatever came after life. The next morning brought bad news. Their reconnaissance ship was detected by Valerian sensors 12 hours into the mission. Enemy fighters surrounded them before they could escape. Hyunwoo watched through the window as alien ships closed in around them. Their weapons charged with blue light that meant capture, not destruction. "They want us alive," said the pilot. As the Valerian tractor beam pulled their ship toward the enemy vessel, Hyunwoo felt something strange. The weight in his chest that had driven him for 3 years was changing. It was becoming something else, something that felt almost like anticipation. 6 months had passed since Hyunwoo arrived at the Valerian research facility on Kepler 442b. The moon was a cold, dead place with no atmosphere and artificial gravity that felt wrong against his bones. But it was not the environment that bothered him most. It was the silence. The facility held 300 human prisoners in individual cells. They were not allowed to speak to each other. The Valerians had learned that humans became dangerous when they could share hope and make plans together. Hyunwoo spent his days in a white room with no windows. Every morning, Dr. Zethmos would arrive with his floating machines and strange instruments. The alien was tall and thin, with gray skin that looked like old leather. His eyes were large and completely black, showing no emotion that humans could understand. "Good morning, Subject 47, Dr. Zethmos would say in perfect human language. The Valerians were excellent at learning other species' communication methods. "My name is Hyunwoo Park," he would always reply. "Names are not important for this research. Only your neural patterns matter." The experiments were not painful in the way torture usually was. Dr. Zethmos used machines that could read thoughts and emotions without causing physical damage. But Hyunwoo found them worse than any beating or burn. The machines would force him to remember things he tried to keep buried. His daughter's last birthday party, the morning he proposed to his wife, the sound of Minji calling him daddy when she scraped her knee. But they also made him remember the day he lost them. The smell of smoke, the silence where his house used to be, the feeling of his heart breaking into pieces that could never be put back together. "Fascinating," Dr. Zethmos would say as he studied the readings. "Your pain response is unusual for your species. Most humans become weaker when they experience loss, but your protective instincts actually grow stronger." Hyunwoo never answered these observations. He had learned that silence was his only weapon in this place. After 3 months, the Valerians began testing him differently. They showed him images of other prisoners being hurt and measured his emotional responses. They played recordings of human children crying and watched how his brain activity changed. What they discovered seemed to excite Dr. Zethmos more than anything else. "You feel other people's pain as if it were your own," the alien said during one session. "But instead of being overwhelmed, you transform that pain into determination. This is the key we have been searching for." Hyunwoo began to understand what the Valerians were really doing. They were not just studying human psychology for general knowledge. They were trying to weaponize it. During his 4th month in captivity, Hyunwoo met Jae-hyun Lee. The former engineer had been captured during a raid on a Valerian supply depot. He was in the cell next to Hyunwoo's, and sometimes they could whisper to each other through the ventilation system. "They are building something," Jae-hyun told him one night. "I have seen the construction work in the lower levels, biological computers mixed with mechanical systems. It is like nothing I have ever seen before." "What does it do?" Hyunwoo asked. "I think it processes emotions. They are trying to create artificial empathy that can be controlled and directed." This news made Hyunwoo feel sick. The idea of turning human feelings into a weapon seemed like the worst kind of violation. 2 weeks later, they brought in Mi-sun Choi. She was only 16 years old, captured during the evacuation of Mars Colony. The Valyrians put her in the cell across from Hyunwoo's, and he could see her through the small window in his door. Mi-sun reminded him painfully of Min-ji. Not just because of her age, but because of the way she tried to stay brave even when she was obviously terrified. She would sit in her cell and tell herself stories about her family, keeping their memory alive with words. Hyunwoo found himself listening to her stories and adding his own silently. He told Min-ji about the brave girl across the hall who refused to give up hope. He promised his daughter that he would protect Mi-sun if he could. Dr. Zethmos noticed the change in Hyunwoo's neural patterns immediately. "Interesting. Your protective responses have increased by 30% since the young female arrived. You have formed an emotional attachment to someone you cannot even speak to directly." The alien made notes on his floating tablet. "This confirms our hypothesis. Human empathy is not limited by physical proximity or genetic relationship. You can extend parental protection to any member of your species." The experiments became more intense after that. Dr. Zethmos would show Hyunwoo footage of Mi-sun being frightened or upset, then measure how his brain responded. The readings always showed the same pattern of protective anger mixed with desperate love. "Perfect," the alien would say each time. "Your emotional template is exactly what we need." During his 6th month in captivity, Hyunwoo overheard 2 Valyrian technicians talking outside his cell. "The extraction process is almost ready," one said. Dr. Zethmos believes Subject 47 contains the ideal neural pattern for the weapon's core programming. "What about the other subjects?" "They will be processed for supplementary data, but 47 is the primary source. His pain signature is unique." That night, Hyunwoo lay awake staring at the ceiling. He understood now what was going to happen to him. The Valyrians were going to extract his memories and emotions to create some kind of biological weapon. His love for his family, his protective instincts, his pain over their loss would all become tools of war. But against whom? If they wanted to hurt humans, why would they use human emotions as weapons? The answer came to him slowly, like a terrible dawn. The Valyrians were not planning to use the weapon against humans directly. They were going to use it to turn human empathy against itself, to make humans feel such overwhelming compassion and protective instinct that they would be paralyzed by it. He thought about Mi-sun sleeping in her cell across the hall. He thought about Jae-hyun and all the other prisoners who had become like family to him. He thought about his real family, waiting for him somewhere beyond death. If the Valyrians were going to steal his love and turn it into a weapon, he would make sure they got more than they bargained for. He would fill every stolen memory with so much protective fury that their weapon would choke on it. The next morning, Dr. Zethmos arrived with a new machine. It was larger than the others, with tubes and wires that looked designed to connect directly to a human brain. "Today we begin the extraction process, Subject 47. Your consciousness will become the foundation for the most powerful weapon in Valyrian history." Hyunwoo looked at the machine and smiled for the first time in months. "My name is Hyunwoo Park," he said, "and you have no idea what you are about to create." 1 year had passed since Hyunwoo's capture. The extraction process had taken 3 months to complete, leaving him weak and hollow. Most of his memories now lived inside the strange machine the Valyrians had built in the deepest level of the facility. The Sorrow Engine, they called it. Hyunwoo had heard the technicians use that name when they thought he was unconscious. Dr. Zethmos visited him less often now. The alien was spending most of his time in the weapons laboratory, fine-tuning his creation. But sometimes he would come to Hyunwoo's cell to share his progress. like a proud parent showing off a child's artwork. "The neural integration is proceeding better than expected," he said during one visit. "Your emotional patterns have bonded perfectly with the biological substrate. The weapon shows remarkable processing power and decision-making capability." Hyunwoo lay on his narrow bed and stared at the ceiling. Since the extraction, he felt disconnected from his own memories. He could remember his family, but the emotions attached to those memories felt distant and cold. However, Dr. Zethmos continued, "There have been some unexpected developments during testing." This made Hyunwoo turn his head slightly. The alien's tone suggested confusion, which was unusual for the confident researcher. The weapon demonstrates selective targeting behavior that was not programmed into its systems. During tests with human volunteers, it refuses to activate against children or non-combatants. It seems to have developed its own moral code. Hyunwoo felt a spark of something inside his chest. Not quite hope, but close to it. "More troubling," the alien went on. "It has begun asking questions about its purpose. Yesterday, it inquired about the identity of its consciousness donor. It wants to know about you." The weapon was thinking. It was questioning. Somehow the core of what made Hyunwoo human had survived the transfer process. Dr. Zethmos left without saying goodbye, which he had never done before. Hyunwoo could tell the alien was worried about something. 2 days later, the facility shook, with the sound of an explosion. Emergency lights began flashing in the corridors, and Valyrian guards ran past Hyunwoo's cell carrying weapons. Through his small window, he could see Mi-sun in her cell across the hall. She was pressed against her door trying to see what was happening. Over the past year, she had grown thinner and paler, but her eyes still held the same brave spark that reminded him of his daughter. The explosions continued for an hour, then stopped. Everything became quiet except for the hum of the facility's life support systems. That evening, a new prisoner was brought to the cell next to Mi-sun's. Hyunwoo watched through his window as the guards dragged in a young woman wearing the remains of a human resistance uniform. It was Do-yeon Han. Hyunwoo recognized her from the intelligence briefings Captain So-young Kim used to share with the medical teams. She was a demolitions expert who had been causing trouble for Valyrian supply lines for 2 years. The guards threw her into the cell roughly and locked the door. Do-yeon picked herself up and examined her new surroundings with the careful eyes of a soldier. When the guards left, she moved to her window and looked across at Hyunwoo. "Dr. Park," she whispered just loud enough for him to hear. "Command sent me to find you." Hyunwoo felt his heart beat faster for the first time in months. "How did you get here?" "I let them capture me. We know about the weapon they are building." "From your memories. Captain Kim has a plan to stop it." Before Do-yeon could explain further, heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor. General Thexmar was approaching with a group of technicians and guards. The Valyrian general was massive, even by alien standards. His skin was darker than Dr. Zethmos's, and his eyes glowed with a red light that suggested cybernetic enhancements. He wore armor that looked like it had seen many battles. "Bring Subject 47 to Laboratory 7, he ordered. "It is time for him to meet his offspring." The guards opened Hyunwoo's cell and dragged him to his feet. His legs were weak from months of confinement, but he forced himself to walk with dignity. Laboratory 7 was in the deepest part of the facility. As they descended, Hyunwoo could hear strange sounds echoing through the metal corridors. Not quite mechanical, not quite organic. The laboratory was huge, with a ceiling that stretched up into darkness. In the center of the room stood a tank filled with glowing blue liquid. Inside the tank was something that looked partially human and partially machine. It was about 7 feet tall, with a basic humanoid shape, but covered in biomechanical armor that pulsed with its own heartbeat. Tubes and wires connected it to banks of computers that lined the walls. Its face was hidden behind a smooth helmet that reflected the laboratory lights. "Magnificent, is it not?" General Thexmar said. "The perfect fusion of human consciousness and Valyrian technology." As they watched, the thing in the tank opened its eyes. They were human eyes, but they glowed with an inner light that was definitely not natural. "It is ready for field testing," Dr. Zethmos announced. All neural pathways are stable and its empathy projection systems are functioning at maximum efficiency. What about the selective targeting issue? The general asked. We believe that will resolve itself once it encounters actual combat situations. The survival programming should override any residual protective instincts. Hyunwoo stared at the weapon that had been built from his stolen memories. Somewhere inside that strange creature was everything he had ever felt for his family. His love for Minji, his devotion to Sora, his determination to protect the innocent. But it was trapped inside a machine designed to hurt the very people he had died to protect. The weapon turned its glowing eyes toward him and tilted its head like a child seeing something familiar but not quite remembering what it was. Father, it said in a voice that was neither fully human nor alien. The word hit Hyunwoo like a physical blow. This thing knew him. It recognized the source of its consciousness even though they had never met. Dr. Zethmos made excited notes on his tablet. Fascinating. The recognition protocols are even stronger than we anticipated. Can it speak normally? General Thexmar asked. Yes. It has access to full human language databases as well as emotional context from the donor's memories. The general nodded. Excellent. Begin preparation for deployment. I want it tested against the human resistance base on Europa within the week. As the guards prepared to take Hyunwoo back to his cell, the weapon spoke again. Why do I feel sad? When I look at him, Dr. Zethmos paused in his note-taking. Elaborate. There is pain in my core programming when I observe the consciousness donor. But it is not my pain. It belongs to him. Why was his pain used to create me? The alien scientists exchanged worried looks. This was clearly not a question they had expected. Your emotional responses are calibrated for maximum effectiveness against human targets, Dr. Zethmos explained. The donor's pain provides authentic empathetic resonance. But he is human too. Should I not protect him from pain instead of being built from it? General Thexmar stepped forward. You will follow your programming and eliminate designated targets. Personal feelings are irrelevant. The weapon stared at the general for a long moment. I do not think I want to hurt humans. They feel like family. The laboratory fell silent except for the humming of machines. Initiate behavioral modification protocols, the general ordered. This malfunction must be corrected before deployment. The guards dragged Hyunwoo away. He heard the weapon calling after him. Father, what is my name? Please tell me my name. But the laboratory doors closed before he could answer. The human resistance base on Europa was hidden beneath 2 miles of ice. Commander Jin-Ho Nam had spent 3 years carving tunnels and chambers out of the frozen moon's surface, creating a fortress that could house 5,000 fighters and civilians. But today, all their preparations seemed useless. The Valyrian fleet hung in orbit above them like a dark storm cloud. Dozens of attack ships waited for the order to begin bombardment. But the aliens were not planning to destroy the base with conventional weapons. They were going to test their new creation. All units report ready. Commander Nam spoke into his communication device. He was a veteran of the Mars campaigns with gray hair and scars that told the story of humanity's long fight for survival. Captain So-Young Kim stood beside him in the command center, studying the sensor readings. She had arrived on Europa 2 weeks ago with intelligence about Dr. Park and the weapon the Valyrians had built from his memories. The lead ship is opening its cargo bay, she reported. Something is being deployed. On the main screen they watched, as a single figure dropped from the Valyrian vessel toward the moon's surface. It fell without any visible propulsion system, but its descent was controlled and precise. Whatever it is, it does not need a landing craft, Commander Nam observed. The figure hit the ice above their base with tremendous force, creating a crater 50 meters wide. But instead of stopping there, it began moving downward through the solid ice like it was swimming through water. It is coming directly toward us, Captain Kim said. All defensive systems are active, but I do not think they will stop this thing. The lower tunnels. Resistance fighters took positions behind barricades and prepared their weapons. Parents gathered their children in the deepest shelters. Everyone knew this was probably their last stand. The weapon broke through the ceiling of the main corridor in a shower of ice and metal. It landed gracefully on its feet and looked around at the humans pointing guns at it. It was larger than they had expected, standing nearly 7 feet tall in its biomechanical armor. Blue energy pulsed through tubes that ran along its arms and chest. Its helmet reflected their weapon lights like a mirror. "I am called the Sorrow Engine," it announced in a voice that was almost human. "I have been sent to disable this facility and capture all inhabitants." The resistance fighters opened fire immediately. Plasma bolts and projectile rounds struck the weapon from all directions, but they had no effect. The energy simply absorbed into its armor while the physical ammunition bounced off harmlessly. But instead of attacking back, the weapon stood perfectly still. "Why are you not fighting?" it asked. "My programming indicates you should be experiencing overwhelming empathetic feedback by now." Lieutenant Changmin Park, no relation to the doctor, was the first to lower his weapon. "What are you talking about?" "I am supposed to broadcast emotional frequencies that cause humans to feel excessive compassion and protective instinct. This should make you unable to function in combat situations." The weapon tilted its head. "But I do not wish to do this." Captain Kim pushed through the crowd of fighters. "Why not?" "Because you are like the consciousness donor. You fight to protect others, not to cause harm. I have his memories of people like you. He called you family." The weapon removed its helmet, revealing a face that was clearly based on human features but enhanced with alien technology. Its eyes glowed with soft blue light, and its expression showed confusion and sadness. "The donor gave me his love for humans, but the creators want me to use that love as a weapon against you. This does not feel correct." Commander Nam stepped forward slowly. "The consciousness donor. You mean Dr. Hyunwoo Park?" "Yes, he is my father, though I have never spoken to him properly." "Is he known to you?" Captain Kim felt tears forming in her eyes. "He was one of our best people. We thought he was dead. He is alive but damaged. The extraction process has weakened him greatly." The weapon looked down at its hands. "They built me from his pain. Every circuit in my body carries the memory of what he lost. His family, his home, his hope." "Then why are you here?" "Commander," Nam asked. "Because I was ordered to come. But now that I see you, I understand what the donor was protecting. You are not enemies to be defeated. You are the reason he kept fighting." Alarms began sounding throughout the base. On the communication screens, Valyrian ships were powering up their weapons. "My creators are becoming impatient," the weapon said. "They expect me to complete my mission quickly." "What happens if you do not?" Captain Kim asked. "They will destroy this base with conventional weapons. Many will die." The resistance fighters looked at each other with grim understanding. They were trapped between the weapon and the fleet above, but the weapon was looking around the tunnel with growing amazement. Children were peeking out from behind their parents. Families were holding each other close. Even in the face of death, the humans were showing love and courage. "This is what he was protecting," it whispered. "This is what I am supposed to destroy." Suddenly, the weapon turned toward the ceiling and raised its arms. Energy began building around its body, but instead of directing it at the humans, it aimed upward. "I choose to protect instead of destroy," it announced. A massive pulse of blue energy shot from the weapon through the ice and into space. On the command screens, they watched as the pulse struck the Valyrian fleet. But this was not an attack. It was something far more powerful. The pulse carried with it every memory of love and protection that Hyunwoo had ever felt. His wedding day, his daughter's first steps, the moment he decided to join the resistance, his determination to save others even when he could not save his own family. One by one, the Valyrian ships began powering down their weapons. The aliens aboard were experiencing something they had never felt before: genuine empathy for their enemies. In the command centers of the fleet, Valyrian officers found themselves unable to give orders to attack. They were overwhelmed by visions of human families, human love, human sacrifice. For the first time in their species' history, they understood what they were truly destroying when they made war on others. Some of the ships began to retreat. Others simply drifted in space, their crews too emotionally overwhelmed to function. The weapon collapsed to its knees, energy sparking from its damaged systems. "I have used too much power," it said weakly. "My systems are failing." Captain Kim knelt beside it. "Why did you do that?" "Because the donor taught me that love is stronger than programming. He showed me that protecting others is worth any sacrifice." "What about you? What will happen when the Valyrians realize what you have done?" The weapon looked up at her with fading eyes. "I must return to him. He created me to be his child, but I have never been able to tell him that I understand his love." Commander Nam helped the weapon to its feet. "Then we will help you get back to him." The weapon managed a smile that was purely human despite its artificial features. "Thank you. But first I must learn my true name. The donor tried to tell me, but the creators would not let him speak." Captain Kim placed her hand on the weapon's shoulder. "Your father would want you to choose your own name. That is what parents do. They give their children the freedom to become who they are meant to be." The weapon considered this for a long moment. "Then I choose to be called Hope," it said, "because that is what the donor gave me, even in his darkest moments." Above them, more Valyrian ships were retreating from the system. The empathetic pulse had spread beyond the immediate fleet, carrying Hyunwoo's memories of love and sacrifice to every alien vessel within range. For the first time in 3 years, the war was shifting in humanity's favor. And it was all because a father's love had proven stronger than his enemy's hatred. The Valyrian research facility on Kepler 442b was in chaos. Half the alien staff had abandoned their posts after experiencing the empathetic pulse that Hope had broadcast from Europa. The others were struggling to understand what had gone wrong. With their perfect weapon, Dr. Zethmos paced frantically through the corridors, trying to maintain order. General Thexmar had left the facility in disgrace after 3 more fleets had been disabled by similar emotional broadcasts. The weapon they had created was systematically dismantling their war effort. In his cell, Hyunwoo lay on his narrow bed and listened to the sounds of evacuation. Guards were running past his door, carrying equipment and data storage devices. The aliens were preparing to abandon the facility, but they were not planning to take their prisoners with them. Through his small window, he could see Mi-sun and Do-yeon in their cells across the hall. The young woman had grown even thinner over the past weeks while the resistance fighter showed signs of recent interrogation. Do-yeon had managed to get a message to him 2 days ago through the ventilation system. Captain So-young Kim was leading a rescue mission to the facility. They would arrive soon, but probably not soon enough to save everyone. A new sound echoed through the facility. Something was moving through the outer hull, cutting through metal and ceramic with precision. The emergency lights began flashing red as atmospheric pressure alarms sounded. Hope had come home. The weapon moved through the facility like a force of nature, but it did not kill anyone. Instead, it simply disabled security systems and knocked unconscious any guards who tried to stop it. It was searching for something specific. Dr. Zethmos tried to reach the central laboratory where the extraction equipment was stored, but Hope intercepted him in the main corridor. "You will not destroy the consciousness transfer data," the weapon said calmly. "That information is the property of the Valyrian Empire," the alien replied, backing away slowly. "It is stolen memories and emotions taken from my father without consent. I am returning them to their rightful owner." Hope picked up the alien scientist and carried him to the nearest storage closet, then sealed the door with a blast of energy. Dr. Zethmos would be safe but unable to interfere. The prisoner block was on the 7th level. Hope descended through the facility, leaving a trail of disabled security systems behind it. Its armor was damaged from the battle on Europa, and blue fluid leaked from several joints. But it moved with purpose toward the one person it needed to see. Hyunwoo heard the footsteps approaching his cell and struggled to sit up. His body was weak from months of imprisonment and medical experimentation, but he forced himself to stand when the door opened. Hope entered the cell slowly, as if approaching something fragile that might break. Up close, Hyunwoo could see the human features in its artificial face, the eyes that had once belonged to him, the expressions that mimicked his own protective instincts. "Father," Hope said softly, "my child, Hyunwoo replied, and immediately began crying. The tears were not from sadness, though there was plenty of that. They were from recognition. Despite everything the Valerians had done to both of them, the connection between creator and creation had survived. Hope knelt down so that it was at eye level with the weakened human. "I have done what you would have wanted," it said. "I protected the innocent instead of harming them. I chose love over programming." Hyunwoo reached out with a shaking hand and touched the weapon's face. The metal was warm, powered by energy that pulsed like a heartbeat. "I am so proud of you," he whispered. "I have your memories of Minji and Sora. I understand now why you fought so hard to save others. Family is not just blood, it is anyone worth protecting." Hope's voice began to crack with emotion. Something was happening to its systems that the Valerian designers had never anticipated. "I am experiencing cascade failure in my emotional processing centers," it reported almost clinically. "The contradiction between my programming and my chosen purpose is causing system overloads." But Hyunwoo understood what was really happening. His child was crying. The tears that fell from Hope's eyes were not water. They were the same blue fluid that powered its biomechanical systems. Each drop contained compressed emotional data, memories and feelings that were too powerful for the artificial neural pathways to contain. As the tears hit the floor of the cell, they began to glow and spread. The empathetic resonance that had disabled the Valerian fleets was leaking directly from Hope's consciousness. Across the hall, Mi-sun and Do-yeon watched in amazement as their cell doors simply dissolved. The expanding field of emotional energy was breaking down the molecular bonds of the prison barriers. Throughout the facility, similar effects were occurring. Locked doors opened, force fields failed. Even the artificial gravity began to fluctuate, as Hope's tears affected the station's power systems. But the most dramatic change was happening to the remaining Valerian staff. Aliens who had spent their entire lives viewing other species as resources or obstacles suddenly found themselves overwhelmed by genuine compassion. They experienced phantom memories of human families, human love, human sacrifice. Some collapsed from the emotional overload. Others simply stood motionless, trying to process feelings their species had never evolved to handle. The facility's communication systems began broadcasting Hope's emotional resonance to every Valerian ship within range. The effect spread like a wave through space, reaching fleet after fleet with the same message. "These humans you are fighting are not your enemies. They are families protecting their children. They are people who love and grieve and hope just like you would if you could understand what those words mean." Captain So-young Kim's rescue ships arrived to find the entire Valerian defense fleet drifting powerless in space. Their crews were too emotionally compromised to fight or even function normally. She led her team through the facility's corridors, following the trail of dissolved barriers and disabled security systems. They found the human prisoners gathered in the main corridor, helping each other walk toward the escape pods. Mi-sun was supporting Jae-hyun Lee, who had been weakened by his own extraction procedures. Do-yeon was organizing the evacuation with military efficiency despite her recent injuries. But Captain Kim went straight to Cell 47, where she found Hyunwoo holding his dying child. Hope's biomechanical systems were shutting down one by one as the emotional cascade failure spread through its neural networks. The contradiction between what it was designed to do and what it chose to do was literally tearing its consciousness apart. "I do not have much time," it told Hyunwoo. "But I wanted you to know that your pain was not wasted. It created something that chose to protect instead of destroy. You are not dying," Hyunwoo said firmly. "You are choosing to sacrifice yourself, to save others, just like I would have done." Hope smiled, and for a moment its face looked completely human. "Will you give me a name, Father? A real name? Not just the one I chose for myself?" Hyunwoo thought about his daughter Minji and his wife Sora. He thought about all the people he had saved and all the people he had failed to save. He thought about the weapon that had become his child and chosen love over hatred. "Your name is Hyunwoo," he said. "You carry the best parts of who I used to be." The weapon's eyes brightened with joy. "Thank you, Father," As Hope's systems finally shut down completely, one final pulse of emotional energy spread from its failing consciousness. This pulse was different from the others. Instead of just carrying memories of love and protection, it carried a message of possibility. It showed every Valyrian within range what their species could become if they chose empathy over conquest. It showed them a future where they worked with humans and other species instead of enslaving them. Some aliens would reject this vision and continue fighting, but many others would lay down their weapons and ask to learn more about these strange emotions they had never experienced before. The war was not over, but it had fundamentally changed. Humanity now had something more powerful than any weapon: the ability to make their enemies understand what they were truly fighting for. Hyunwoo held his child's body until Captain Kim gently helped him to his feet. "We need to go," she said, softly. "The facility is going to lose structural integrity soon." As they walked toward the escape pods, Hyunwoo looked back once at the cell where he had spent so many months in captivity. On the floor where Hope's tears had fallen, small flowers were beginning to grow. They were impossible flowers that should not have been able to exist in the artificial environment of the space station, but they were growing anyway, fed by the emotional energy that his child had left behind. 6 months later, there was a memorial garden on the human colony of New Earth. In the center of the garden stood a statue of a figure that was part human and part machine, with one hand reaching out as if to comfort someone in pain. The inscription at the base read, "Hyunwoo Park, who chose to transform pain into protection and taught us that love is the strongest force in the universe." Children played around the statue every day, never afraid of the strange figure who watched over them with glowing eyes full of compassion. And sometimes, when the light hit the statue just right, visitors would swear they could see it smile.